Hi, welcome to our channel, Check Globe. Today we will talk about making sustainable decisions in everyday life and personal experience of a climate scientist. So, let's dig in. When you were trying to have a more sustainable life, have you experienced any difficulties while you're doing this?
Oh yes, and I would say also huge privileges in doing so. So let's start with the difficulties. Obviously I'm not Czech, so I live in a country that is not my home country, and my family, a lot of my family is still back in the UK. In order to keep in contact with them, I do face difficult decisions about how do I do that. There is no travel option that doesn't have emissions. And how do I get there? Do I spend a lot of money and a lot of days taking the train to go and see them? Because of course they don't even live in London, so it's not that, it's not that straightforward. Which when you have a partner and 2 children and taking the train, that's really expensive and very time consuming. Do I take the cheaper option of flying, meaning that I can actually keep in touch with them and we can afford it? So that's probably the biggest difficulty in my life, is the travel. Yeah. And I never have perfectly resolved it. Other than the fact that when you live through a global pandemic, you don't get to travel to see them anyway. And I also recognise that I have huge privilege in the kinds of decisions that I can make. For example, I don't ever buy my children clothes, but that's because I have friends and family who have older children and they just pass them all on to me. If you don't have that kind of network, then you end up buying cloths. You have no other choice. I also was fortunate enough to be able to afford to put my kids through cloth diapers. So I didn't use disposable diapers, I used cloth diapers on them. And that's it costs quite a lot of money. I think overall it worked out cheaper than buying disposable diapers for 2 children, but it's an initial cost that you pay up front, and not everybody can do that.
I guess it gets quite a big time investment.
Yeah.
So it's not something you just throw away. You have to take care of it. You have to wash it. You have to make sure that there is enough for the next following days. And
yes, and I was very relieved when they both came out of diapers. That was a celebration. So there are difficulties associated with the decisions that we make, and I fully understand why people don't make the same decisions that I've made. And I think that one of the things that we have to be very careful to do in society is to recognise that currently the things we label as sustainable consumption are more expensive and they are not accessible to everybody. And this is why I spend quite a lot of time emphasising the collective and the system changes, more than I spend time emphasising the individual changes. Because when we just focus on individuals and we just put in place policies and say, okay, well, if you want change, then you have to change, we're denying the fact that that change is not available to everybody, that actually it is more expensive. Not everybody has the luxury of making these decisions.
And then we have disposable straws problem. I think that's a really good example for this.
Yeah, it bothers me that we're getting to the point of blaming people for not taking sustainable actions, when actually a lot of people are just doing what they can with the resources that they have available. And if we are following, we talked about this sort of technocentric pathway, where we're saying, okay, people aren't going to be allowed, we're going to say that people should be driving electric cars and that's the sustainable thing to do, but they're more expensive and not everybody has access to that. We're starting to stigmatise those people who do not have the luxury of making the sustainable decision, which isn't very sustainable in itself anyway. And that's a situation that I'm very keen to avoid.
And recently there have been more talks about this new disease for younger generation, which is called like environmental guilt or climate guilt, that people feel really bad about not making certain choices just because the lifestyle doesn't afford it, or they don't have enough money or time. So I guess.
Yeah, and I think these are critical questions that we need to be asking as a society. And they're critical questions that we just don't have a forum or a place to have this discussion. When do we have it, right? It just doesn't exist, this conversation space, and we need to have it because we do need to be thinking very carefully about the fact that we have a generation of kids growing up scared about what's coming. And I wish I could tell them that they don't need to be scared, but I can't tell them that. The science tells us that actually now is the time to be scared. Change is coming and it's not good. And the report 2 weeks ago, the IPCC report, spelled out that there is an opportunity, there is a window of opportunity here, but it is closing quickly. So we have to do something now. Hope is not lost, but we are going to lose it if we don't act now. So I can't tell them not to be scared. Of course, they need to be scared. Or it's logical to me that they're worried about this. We also have people who are feeling huge guilt about this, about the decisions that they're making and the things that they're not able to do. And then we also have people who have sufficient wealth, they're comfortable, they're living well, and they want to do something, but they don't know what to do or how to do it. And then we have people who are actually doing very well off climate change and stand to gain from climate change, or they are representing business interests who don't want change because it would change their profit margins or perhaps challenge their ability to accumulate more wealth. And I think that as a society, that's we need to be talking about this and thinking about what's the equitable way forward, rather than just letting it be and say, okay, we'll just keep coming up with a techno fix to solve this and this symptom. Let's really reevaluate this, what we're doing, what justice means to our future generations and to our neighbours around the world.
And when we're talking about personal and family life, are you trying to promote this kind of information or views on other people? Are you talking about this in your free time?
Yeah, and fun at parties. Yes and no. Yes, I talk about it. And I think that this is also something that we can all do. I think that there's a general feeling in society that no one else is panicking. It's obviously nothing to worry about. And that's also dangerous because it's happening, and I think people don't realise that it's happening, or they're reassured that, well, the politicians aren't panicking, they say it's going to be fine, it must be fine. And they're not really aware of the fact that it's happening. And so I think it's quite important that those of us who do have information on this do talk to people and share that with their friends and family. And I do. I think we also do, though, have to be very careful not to fall into the gap of being seen to blame people. I think logically, a lot of people's response when you bring it up is, oh, but I mean, I have to drive, or I'm not giving up my foreign holiday. And I think that we need to find ways to have these conversations in ways that aren't confrontational and that don't blame people for the decisions that they are taking, but that engage in raising awareness and raising understanding about what's happening and the fact that we do need things to change and what can we do about that. So I think having these conversations is important. Yeah, it would be good to see it being picked up more by media, by mainstream media. I think there's been some interesting films released recently, for example, Don't Look Up, that did spark a global conversation. All of this is being produced in English. There's films on it in English. There's reports being produced in English, and that's not accessible. And it feels like it's not talking about the society and the culture that we have here. And so it doesn't feel like it's about us, really. And I think that needs to change. The more that we can have conversations about what it means here for us, and how we are going to address that. I think that's a very important thing we should be doing.
Okay, thank you very much.